Welcome to the SheSpeaks podcast, a podcast created to elevate women's voices across diverse backgrounds on topics impacting women. I'm your host, Lisa Freud, founder and CEO of SheSpeaks. Each week, I have a conversation with a woman expert who shares her best how-to advice on a topic so we can learn how to better do that one thing from a woman who's been there and done that. Our hope is that these conversations help you feel more inspired to speak up and be heard in your own life and work. Now, on to the episode. Welcome back to the show. Hope you're all having a great week so far. So we are in the thick of it. We're in spring and we are hurling quickly towards summer, but I always find this time of year one where I do naturally want to get myself organized. I don't know why. It always happens to me in May where I just suddenly have this urge to organize. And I know that that is probably, I'm not alone. That is definitely an earmark of spring, that we're decluttering and getting ourselves organized. And so I have a great guest on. If you are somebody who has maybe thought about wanting to get more organized, you've struggled in the past with getting yourself organized, this is going to be a really great episode for you to hear. I have on with me Lisa Woodruff. She's the founder and CEO of Organize 365. And Lisa is somebody who really had to learn how to do this. It was not something that came naturally to her, as you will understand, but she found herself overwhelmed with the chaos of working 60-plus hour weeks. Her house was a mess. Her kids weren't having their needs met, and things were mounting up. Bills and all of the things that had to get organized in her life just were not getting organized. And so she decided to take a year. To the year of 2012, she spent every single day focusing on figuring out how to create an organization for herself and for her family. It then became this amazing organizational system that she has now helped thousands of other people figure out how to do for themselves. And what we talk about is how to create organization, and not just in your home, but personal organization, family organization. There are different kinds of organization. We talk about why are we so disorganized, and then what are some things that we can do, some steps we can take immediately to start to learn how to declutter and organize and increase our productivity and our feeling of calm. So I am really excited to have you hear this conversation. It is chock full of great tips and advice. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. Here we go. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, spring is around the corner. Here we are getting away from the dark days of the winter. And I do feel when the spring happens, this kind of desire in it, like inside of me to get more organized. I am sure that I'm not the only one. But let me first start by asking you that question. Is that a real thing that springtime makes us want to get more organized because of, like, we talk about spring cleaning and all of that? Is that a thing?
I don't know if spring makes us want to get more organized, but through my observation, we have what I call golden windows. And that is one of the recognizable golden windows, like the start of the new year, spring cleaning, Labor Day. These are all times when you naturally want to declutter everything that is not breathing, and sometimes things that are breathing as well.
So the golden window refers to a time that kind of is naturally occurring in the year that makes us want to get more organized.
Yes. So we have these natural golden windows every single year. And then we have other golden windows that can be like milestone birthdays, like 40 is a big one. Or if you have lifetime events like moving, having a baby, getting married, getting divorced, losing a loved one. I've termed all of these golden windows because they are times in your life when you are ready to do something new, to shed the old and start a new chapter in your life. Sometimes from a positive experience, sometimes from a negative experience. But if you have stacked golden windows, the amount of energy in your body to get organized is so much that you can't even stop it, even if you're not an organized person. So like, let's say that you just moved and your youngest child is entering all day school and it's spring. Like good luck to anyone who's going to stop you from getting organized. There's no stopping you at that point because you just have so much opportunity and energy in order to get organized. And sometimes you have very little energy. It's just, oh, well, it's spring, but nothing else is changing in your life. And you have no milestone birthday and there's no changing in your immediate family. You'll organize for a weekend. But if you have these stacked golden windows, you'll organize for months.
Okay, well, I am definitely not someone who's had stacked golden windows, I have to admit, because I don't think I've ever had months at a time where I want to organize. I definitely have had certain times where I do. As I said before, I do think springtime for me is like, okay, let's shed some of the stuff that maybe we added from winter and get rid of it. But it's interesting that is there also, so we talked about golden windows as a time of the year or times in life, but is there also an element of organization that is intuitive for some people, but not others? I want to sort of get in a little bit to the mindset. Are there just some of us who are naturally more organized than others or want to be more organized than others?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I am a naturally organized person and my mother is not. And so I always observed that either you were naturally born organized or you weren't. And people who weren't, you could help them get organized, but then they would quickly get disorganized again. And so I just thought you were either one way or the other. Now, what I found in my 40s when I started doing in-home organizing with people was that, yes, if you've never learned the skill of organizing, or if you had the skill of organizing in a prior lifetime, but now you're in a new life experience, you may not be experiencing organization now. You need to learn the organizational skills for that decade. But once you learn them, you can stay and maintain your own organization until the next decade. Or sometimes in the case of people who are diagnosed with ADHD, they need more check-ins and more supports in getting those structures reestablished. But everyone can learn the skill of organizing. So after organizing for 3 years, once I realized it was a learnable skill, I was like, oh, I don't think people know this. Like, I think people think either I have it or I don't. And if I don't, well, then life's just going to be harder for me. And that's not true. Everyone can learn the skill of organizing.
Are there times for each of us where we are naturally just more disorganized? I'm just thinking, I know that there are times in my life where I'm overwhelmed, as an example, and my house looks like a bomb went off in it because everything just gets so much more disorganized. And I have noticed that pattern in myself. So I guess my first question is, am I alone in that, when I feel overwhelmed, I can get more disorganized? And are there sort of emotional states that lead for us to be either more organized or less organized?
Yes, you're not incorrect. In what I have observed, there are two things at play here. One is other people, and the other one is yourself. So let's take the other people first. If you have little people in your house that are under the age of 5, it is like shoveling snow in a snowstorm for that entire period of time. The first year of life, a baby will go through so many different food, diaper sizes, clothing sizes, places they sleep, toys they eat, like everything. And that starts to slow down until they're 5. But until they're 5, you are literally changing their clothes. The size of their clothes is entirely a couple of times a year. The foods that they will and won't eat, like what they will play with, who they're playing with, what their schedule is. And they're not in all day school unless they're in daycare. But even if they're in daycare, then it's just stuff management in 2 different locations. Like, it really doesn't necessarily help you that much. Yeah. So if you have children under the age of 5, instead of getting organized, I just counsel you to take a nap. Because if you take a nap, it's all going to feel better and it's never going to stay organized anyway. Stop trying to make it look like a daycare center. The only reason a daycare center looks that way is because they have all of that hired help and your children leave at night. Your house is not going to look that way. So it's an unrealistic expectation. And there are all other, like, you may be a full-time caregiver for a parent, or you may be traveling and you work 80 hours a week. So sometimes outside forces make us unorganized. The second time that you typically will get very unorganized is internal disorganization. And I observe that this happens right before you're about to move into a new phase of life. So you could be very disorganized before you move somewhere. You'll be very disorganized in your like 38 to 42. Somewhere in there, you will have a time where you are just decluttering what you're not going to take with you from your 20s and 30s into your 40s and 50s. And that happens about the age of 40 for women. And it is you feel very, very disorganized until you finally go, okay, that's not going to be part of my identity as I move into my 40s. Similarly, when you get married or, other times in life as well. And often that disorganization is part of the transformation that you're making. Like you must physically declutter the things that you have on your calendar, in your paper, in your home, in order to make the space for what is new and what is coming next. And the scary part is you don't know what that is yet.
That is so interesting. So much of what you're saying resonates with me as I just think about my own life and the phases that I've been through. As I mentioned before, times where I get feeling like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. So everything else seems to kind of go in that same direction at the same time. So there's almost like that messiness going on in my brain, and that displays in messiness in other areas of my life. I would love if you could talk a little bit. You mentioned this before, how this all started for you. So tell us about the year 2007 and what that means to you and what happened in your life.
So 2007, I was 35 years old, and it was probably the year prior when my parents announced that they were getting divorced. I had 2 kids, 5 years old and under. I was cobbling together income from many different streams of revenue from home, direct sales, cleaning houses, things like that. And everything just started to fall apart. Like obviously your parents getting divorced, my kids' medical needs were increasing. We're about to go into the global recession. But we had already started experiencing that recession because my husband's in the oil and gas industry. And I was driving everywhere for my kids' appointments. And so we were using a lot of gas, and gas prices were ridiculous. My father ended up getting sick and passing away in 2009. And then my sister and I became the executor of that estate and selling our family home. And I just kept sliding deeper and deeper and deeper into the pit of despair until December of 2011. Like it was a 5-year slide. I was like, can't get worse than this. Can't get worse than this. And then finally it's December 2011. And my administrator told me I wasn't a very good teacher. I was 39. And I was like, there's no way I'm not a good teacher. Like I'm individually teaching algebra to 18 different students at individual levels in the same time. I am a good teacher. I can tell you what I'm not good at. I'm not a good mom. I'm not a good wife. I'm not a good sister. I'm not good. Like I have a whole bunch of things I'm not good at, but teaching is the only thing I actually feel like I'm still doing well. And if you don't think I'm doing teaching well, what am I doing? What am I even doing? And the women in my family lived to be 100, and I was turning 40. And I was like, there's no way I could do this for 60 years. Like I cannot live on this hamster wheel of going nowhere for another 60 years. Like this is not my story. I need to find a new story. And when you've been experiencing 5 years of hopelessness, like finally you go, maybe it's me. Like maybe I'm the problem here. Yeah. And if I'm not the problem, or I am, whatever, maybe I'm the only solution because getting a different job didn't work. Like nothing I was doing for 5 years worked. And so I quit my job. Don't recommend that. But the next thing I did while I was looking for another job is I walked through my house. I didn't recognize it. I did not recognize my house. And I know I bring all this stuff into my house. So how I didn't recognize it, I don't know. And I was like, I have to reclaim this space, and I have to reclaim my job as the head of the household at home in order to figure out what I'm going to do next. And that's when I started Organize 365.
Okay, so let's talk about Organize 365, which basically it started with you taking 365 days, right, of 2012 to start organizing. How did that process work?
It's complete chaos. It was complete chaos because I knew I'd been organized in previous seasons of my life. And I knew that organization was what had always gotten me the job or kept the job that I had. But I was the most disorganized I'd ever been. And also, this is something that's really important. I did not have a model of what organization looked like after 40. Like, because by the time my parents were 40, I was already in college because they had me really young. And so like they were playing golf and I was still parenting kids. So I didn't know what I was going for. I didn't know what the model was I was trying to achieve. I don't desire to retire, really. I always knew I should and could be a business owner. So I knew I wanted to do that. And I started a blog and I named it Organize 365 because I knew that was a good keyword and that I knew I could talk about organization for the rest of my life, but I had no idea how I would monetize it or what the job would be. But I knew I had to start putting all of my time and effort into something that was going to last for decades, not something that was going to last for days. And so I really organized my house and let go of my 20s and 30s in order to be what I could be in my 40s. So specifically for me, some of the things I had to let go of were, I've never been pregnant. So our children are gifts from adoption. I had all that infertility paperwork, all those adoption books, all that stuff in the basement. I had to give those away, knowing that that was not part of what I was taking forward. I still had everything from when I taught preschool before I even had children in my basement, like tubs and boxes. And I gave that up in 2012. There were a lot of things like that that I was storing in my storage areas that were identities that I had or thought I might have in the future that I finally had to say, this is not going for it. This is not going for it. I had like 30 different projects that were not even started or partially started. I gave up like 28 of them and only finished 2. I said, by the end of 2012, there will be no unfinished projects in this house anymore. And I really had to make enough space for whatever was going to be next. And I did that by organizing my house.
Yeah, I love that. It's so interesting too to hear your story of how that came to be and getting organized in your own home and how that, evolved for you, but also this notion of what we're holding on to.
Yeah.
And that being a part of getting organized. So let's talk about that for a moment. You mentioned before about teaching people about getting organized, right? How that there's some people who just never were taught how to be organized, and you can actually teach people how to be organized. So is that the case that many of us who maybe are not naturally organized, we can learn how to be organized?
1,000%. Every single person on the planet can learn to be organized. It would be like saying that some people can learn to talk and other people can't, or some people can learn to tie their shoes or other people can't. Like for some people, more supports need to be put in. And also learning the skill of organizing isn't like tying your shoes. It is more like learning a foreign language. It's very nuanced. It changes throughout seasons and different income levels. And it is a skill that you will always keep working on. So organization is actually 3 things. It is decluttering, organizing, and increasing productivity. Decluttering is very labor intensive, but you can do it quickly and everybody can learn how to declutter. Organizing is taking what's left and knowing where to find things when you need to find things and only keeping what you need in this season of life. It's a lot more thinking than it is doing. And then increasing productivity is the skill that you'll never stop learning the rest of your life, like planning for the next season, increasing your productivity in everything you do so that you can get more capacity. Organization gives you time, productivity gives you capacity. So Organize 365 has done its own research. And what we found after surveying thousands of people is that 87% of Americans believe that organization is a learnable skill, which is great. I didn't realize that people knew they could learn the skill. Like I was so excited about that. And then in that same study, we defined organization as personal organization, like basically your bedroom, bathroom, closet, your car, family organization, which are all those communal spaces, storage organization, which sometimes we don't like to think about, and paper organization. And we said, thinking about home organization in these 4 buckets, how organized are you? And the responses were 13, 14, 15, and 18%. And I was like, oh my goodness. So number one, I was so excited that so many people thought that organization was a learnable skill. I thought that was what we needed to teach people. No, what we need to teach people is how to achieve organization. Either their example of what they're trying to achieve is Pinterest perfect, which is not attainable, or more importantly, I just think people don't know basic organizational skills. They understand decluttering. They understand getting rid of what you don't need, but we aren't really teaching what it looks like to truly have a functionally organized house. Not Pinterest perfect, not something you're going to put on the internet, but you always know where the stuff is in your house so you don't waste any time looking for things. That's what organization is.
I'm glad that you're defining it because it does have multiple elements to it, right? And you mentioned that 85% of people think that they can learn how to be organized. But when you
87.
ask them about the specific areas of organization,
Yep.
the personal, the family, the paper, or like the common space, when I say family, the paper, and what was the fourth? Storage, that in each of those areas, people didn't even give themselves above a 20%. Nobody gave, like none of them did anyone have above 20%
Right.
in terms of their own abilities.
Right.
Wow.
Which is abysmal. Like if we're a school, we're not even on an improvement plan. We are shut down.
Yeah.
Our school is just shut down. And so it is my burning desire to meet the needs of people who believe that organization is a learnable skill with the preschool, kindergarten level teaching that I do, of teaching it like in bite-sized, chunkable ways, little tiny exercises. We're not emptying out your whole closet. I can get your closet organized. It might take a month in 15 to 30 minutes a day. We're going to do shoes one day. We're going to do pants another day. It may take you a whole week to get pants done. I don't care. It doesn't matter. As long as you are working towards getting organized, you are making forward progress. It is impossible to be behind when you are organizing. It's literally impossible. Any action you take, cleaning out the silverware drawer, is a win. And some will need to be redone, especially if you're in the active parenting years. But if you're not in the active parenting years, most of these categories only need to be truly, really revamped once a decade, and some of them only once. So if you get your paper organized and you move from a file cabinet to binders, your paper will be organized for the rest of your life. It will need to be maintained, but it will never get completely disorganized again. Your storage room, once organized the way we do it, like an internal store that's prepaid for on shelving units with bins, will literally move 25 times if you want to, and your storage room will never be disorganized ever again, because the system will move with you.
Oh, I love it. So it's a lot about systems.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk some tips. Let's say I'm a person who wants to get organized and I've struggled. Maybe I'm a little bit more naturally able to get organized than somebody else. But what are some tips for getting started in organization?
So I'm going to take the storage room, because I think everybody has that hot mess room where they're like, please don't go there. We're going to go there. Because the storage room is the hardest one to mentally get your mind around getting organized. But once it gets organized, it's the easiest one to maintain and stays organized the longest. And I think that part of what I've determined is the problem and why people are not successful in getting their home organized is because there are no universal systems that we're all working towards. We're working towards the latest and the greatest, what we've seen somebody else do. Whereas the systems that I have identified that work from the time you're 12 until the time you're 92. So the storage room, I want you to think about your storage room as a store. It is your internal prepaid for store. Here's how we use our internal prepaid for store. We shove everything we don't know what to do in there, including and mostly things that are broken. We don't need them anymore. They were supposed to go to a family member, but we just haven't taken them back yet. I mean, and empty boxes. A lot of empty boxes. 50% of your storage room can be gone within a week by just getting rid of the broken things, the things that need to be returned, and the empty boxes. And I know this because we organize hundreds of houses in Cincinnati, and my co-leader, Carol, would always want to start in the storage room. I'm like, oh no. And she'd be like, no, but we get the biggest bang there, because within hours we could see so much more space. Now, the second thing that is in your storage room is your memories and things that you don't want to deal with. Like for me, the infertility things, or my education career that I knew I was never going to go back and be a kindergarten and preschool teacher. And so it's, what do we do with those? How long do you hold on to those things? And I want to tell you, you can hold on to them for the rest of your life. There is no reason to get rid of them. Put them in a box and label them and keep them. And you can go visit your memories and your hopes and aspirations and past dreams. There is no reason that you need to get rid of them. But you need to be able to access them and access everything else. So I just use the ventilated plastic HDX Home Depot shelving because it's plastic. It'll go in a damp basement. It'll go in a hot attic. It'll go in Texas. It'll go in Minnesota. You can lift it if you're 70. You can lift it if you're 7. It doesn't matter. It's really lightweight. And you put shelving in, and you buy the bins that fit on the shelving, which there are specific bins that you need to get. It's about $100 per unit when you buy everything. Doesn't matter. Once you do this, when you go down and I want to look at my stuff I saved from my preschool, I could pull out the bin, I can look at it, I can put it back. And also I can store all of my Costco stuff down there, and I can store all my holiday decorations, and I can store off-season clothing, because every single thing is in a bin and it is labeled and we know what is in there.
Yeah. So that's a great tip. Start in the storage area because you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And think about it not as I have to get rid of everything, but I can find things that naturally broken, whatever that I can get rid of. But also I can think about just putting it into a place as opposed to having it laying about, let's say, not organized in some way. And, gives you some way to just feel like you've had an impact.
It is stressful to do it because you don't want to give up on that dream or that hope or that memory. But often once you declutter it, you never realize you did. So here's a great example. I celebrate Christmas. That's the holiday I celebrate in December. For whatever reason, everything that you use to decorate in December seems to have additional importance than it actually has. And so I had, things from my childhood or things that we used in the very first years of our decorating for the holidays. I'm 50 now, so I've been married 28 years. It was like an archaeological dig of anything you could possibly have in the month of December was in my storage room. And every time I went through some of these bins, I had stuff from my childhood that was not appropriate to my decorating style, or I was never going to use it again. But I had it and I felt guilty getting rid of it because it was mine and it was part of my history. Finally, one year, I just did it. I just got rid of it. I just threw it all away. The next year, I dreaded going into the basement because I was going to have to hit that bin again. What am I going to do with it? And it wasn't there. And it was so ingrained with me. It was such a tradition that I dreaded this bin that when I went there and it wasn't there, I was surprised because I couldn't believe I had actually gotten rid of it. And I was so excited for myself. And now I don't even remember what was in that bin.
Yeah.
So getting rid of it, it's all an internal game. You guys, nobody's asking you for what's in that bin. No one knows what you're saving and not saving. I remember I said to my son, I was like, hey, I've got all these race cars. I've got all this. And he said, you still have all that? I said, yeah, it's labeled and it's stored in storage. He's 22 now. I think I asked him when he was 18. He goes, first of all, I don't know any of that stuff exists. And second of all, if you tell me, I'm going to want it. And I don't need to want it. So you should just get rid of it.
Smart kid.
Yeah, because he's a sentimental guy. And he knows if I show it to him, he's going to want it too. Yeah. But I do have all of his Legos. Yeah. Because, that was a significant investment.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and there are certain things that as parents, we know that they might want that someday, even if they don't want it when they're 18 or 22, right? They may want it someday. So we do have to put that filter over what they're saying. The other thing I want to probe a little bit on is because you've worked with so many people and have a good perspective on what holds people back. If you had to summarize, what is the key thing that you think holds us back from getting organized?
We just stay in our head way too long. We think that people care. We think that we're getting graded on our housework. We think that we're actually going to finish our to-do list. And I'm speaking to women primarily here. We hold ourselves to such a high standard. We are never going to hit it. We're never going to hit it. And you think that you're going to get your to-do list done. Let me just tell you, I have finished my to-do list twice in my entire life. It was the most bored I've ever been. So you don't really want to finish it. You just want to maintain it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is no one is grading you. No one's noticing what you're doing because maybe you don't even need to be doing it. So here's a great story to cement this for you. When the pandemic hit, we had someone cleaning our house. I have cleaned houses and I've had my house cleaned. And we were having someone clean our house at that time. Obviously, isolated. Can't have the person come clean your house anymore. Week 7 is when I noticed dust. So if you are dusting your house any more frequently than every 6 weeks, you're over dusting. So we have this checklist of the things we're going to clean and how often we're going to clean our sheets. And I used to iron my sheets and all these things that we think we should do as a good housekeeper. A, your family doesn't even know you're doing any of these things. And B, should you be? Do you want to be? Like my mom loves to have her sheets in her bed ironed because she loves the way that it feels. I remember Oprah saying that her sheets were changed in her bed every 2 days because she loved the starchness of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time for that.
Right.
I am not Oprah. So
Right.
I don't iron my sheets and I don't change them as frequently as maybe you think you should, but I take a bath every night. So I have no problem with it.
Right.
What is your standard? Lower your standards until your family notices and then say, oh, hey, yeah, if you want to do that, feel free, and only do what you want to do. I do dishes 3 times a week because I don't eat very much from home and nobody else at home does them. And that's when I want to do them. I do them 3 times a week.
I love it. Well, there's so much in here and so much insight. So, Lisa, if people want to follow you and learn more about what you're doing, get your great tips, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, if you want to learn about the research, you can go to our website, organize365.com/research. And then I also have a podcast, Organize 365. It's been around for a while. So we've taken some of the different series that we've done and turned them into playlists. So you could just search for Organize 365 research and just listen to the podcasts about research. Or if you want to look, there's one for productivity, one for work organization, etc.
Am I surprised that you've organized your playlists for your podcast? I am
My
not.
podcast editor always says, the way that you do things in podcasts have not been done before. I'm like, just wait.
I love it. Oh, I love it. In fact, I'm thinking maybe we can organize that way. We've been talking about organization too.
Yep.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation, learned something new for sure about this. And, our audience will definitely have some great takeaways from this. So thank you for spending your time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you're an influencer or a brand that wants to work with us, please feel free to email us at info@shespeaks.com. Until next time.